The WNBA is heading straight into one of those moments that could define an entire era, and the date everyone around the league has circled is March 10th. That league-mandated deadline has basically turned the temperature up on everything. For more than a year, the players' side has presented a pretty united image, especially after that overwhelming strike authorization vote back in December. But now, with the clock actually ticking, the public unity is starting to show real stress fractures, and the conversations behind the scenes are being described with words you don't usually hear when everything is smooth, spirited, passionate, and at times tough. If you're a fan who's been enjoying the league's explosion in attention, attendance, sponsorships, and mainstream coverage, this is the part you worry about. Because when labor negotiations get to this stage, it's no longer just about principles and big-picture goals. It becomes about real-life consequences, missed paychecks, lost momentum, uncertainty for players who aren't max contract stars. And the biggest potential outcome hanging over everything is a season-disrupting strike that could put the 2026 WNBA season in jeopardy. The heart of the tension is that what once looked like a single, unified front has turned into a much more complicated internal debate. It's not that players suddenly don't want a better collective bargaining agreement. They do. It's not that they don't recognize how much money is entering women's basketball right now. They do. The issue is that when you actually start talking about holding out, the cost isn't the same for every player. And as soon as that reality hits the room, the strategy stops being simple. The WNBA Players Association, the WNBPA, has been pushing hard for a landmark deal, and a lot of the attention is centered around the idea of gross revenue sharing. That's the kind of model players believe better reflects the league's growth and their role in generating it. But the closer we get to March 10th, the more the conversation shifts from "Are we united?" to "How far can we realistically go?" and "What happens if we go too far?" That's exactly why the most recent virtual meeting became such a big deal. Representatives from the league's 12 original franchises were involved, and the incoming expansion teams were part of the mix too. And from everything reported about it, that meeting wasn't polite background noise. It was intense. It sounded like one of those sessions where people are trying to solve the same problem, but don't agree on the best way to get there. Terry Carmichael Jackson, the executive director of the WNBPA, addressed it afterward in a letter that was obtained by Front Office Sports. And the language she used is really telling. She didn't pretend it was easy. She called it spirited and passionate. And she admitted it was tough at times. That's not the kind of phrasing you use when everyone is nodding along and ready to march in step. That's the kind of phrasing you use when there are real disagreements. But leadership is trying to keep the room from splitting into camps. She also pushed back directly against the idea that disagreement automatically equals dysfunction. Her message was basically, honest debate isn't division, it's engagement. That's an important point, because unions aren't supposed to be silent. They're supposed to wrestle with strategy. But it also confirms what a lot of people suspected. The internal conversations are getting more complicated as the deadline gets closer. And now, it's not only the players debating among themselves. Agents have stepped into the spotlight, which is a huge signal that uncertainty is growing. On Thursday, nearly a dozen prominent player agents reportedly sent a collective letter to Carmichael Jackson. They urged transparency and coordinated communication as the deadline approaches. That kind of letter doesn't happen if everyone is confident about the plan. Agents are involved because they're trying to protect their clients, and their clients aren't all in the same position. When you look at the WNBA through a labor lens, you have 144 players with wildly different realities. Some are stars with endorsements and financial cushioning. Some are veterans who have made good money but still feel the pressure of career length. Some are younger players trying to secure a place in the league. Some are fighting for roster spots every season. The union has to represent all of them. And that's where the united front becomes harder to maintain the closer you get to an actual strike. This is also where the league's current momentum becomes part pressure. The WNBA is not in the same place it was even a few years ago. The commercial growth has been undeniable. The visibility is higher. Corporate partnerships are bigger. National broadcasts are stronger. And that's why some players are cautious about any outcome that could pause the season. They're thinking, we finally have this momentum. Do we risk stalling it? Even if the long-term goal is worth it, That short-term cost feels real. At the same time, plenty of players remain fully prepared to strike if the league's proposal stays where it is. The reporting mentions a 70% net revenue proposal from the league side, and that's become a sticking point for many players who want a bigger, clearer share that reflects what's coming into the business now. If you're a player watching arenas fill up and media rights discussions grow and sponsorship dollars expand, you naturally start asking for a model that doesn't feel like you're being asked to accept less than your value. This is where Lexi Brown's comments really cut through the noise, because she said what most fans need to understand. She explained that you can't expect every meeting to be harmony, because everyone in the league comes from different experiences in basketball and in life. She basically said she never expected a week-by-week process where everybody agrees on everything. And honestly, that's one of the most realistic statements you'll hear about any labor situation. People are acting like disagreement means a union is collapsing. In reality, disagreement means the members are taking the decision seriously. Brown also put her finger on the hardest question of the entire negotiation. Everybody wants a fair CBA, but fair doesn't look identical to every player. And that's the tension. If you're a max-level player and the league is booming, fair might mean pushing hard for a major revenue-sharing system that changes everything long-term. If you're a player on the edge of the roster, fair might mean protecting the season and protecting jobs while still making progress. If you're a veteran who's seen how long the league fought for attention, fair might be a blend of both, not wanting to waste a moment, but also refusing to settle. In other words, the union isn't just negotiating against the league office. It's also managing internal differences in risk tolerance. That's what happens when the stakes are enormous and the consequences are personal. And make no mistake, the stakes here are huge. A March 10th deadline doesn't just create urgency, it forces decisions. It turns general agreement into specific choices. It requires leadership to explain the plan clearly and repeatedly. Because the moment players feel like they don't understand what's happening, trust starts to wobble. That's why those agents pushing for transparency and coordinated messaging matters so much. It suggests some people feel like the communication needs to be tighter, especially with such a wide range of financial situations among players. From the league's perspective, the pressure is different but just as intense. The WNBA has been riding unprecedented momentum, and league officials don't want the season disrupted. The business side doesn't want to pause what's building. Sponsors don't want uncertainty. Broadcasters don't want chaos. But the league also has to consider the long-term structure it's willing to commit to, especially when the players are pushing for a bigger share that's tied directly to growth. So in the coming weeks, what you're really watching is whether both sides can find a deal that feels like progress without pushing the situation into a standoff. The union is trying to secure a model that matches the new WNBA economy. The league is trying to keep the season on track and manage financial commitments. And in the middle are the players, who are united in wanting better, but not always identical in how much risk they're ready to take to get it. What fascinates me about this as a basketball fan is how similar it feels to a locker room when the stakes are highest. Everybody wants the same trophy, but not everybody agrees on the same game plan. Some players want to run, some want to slow it down, some want to take the big shot early, some want the perfect look late. Disagreement doesn't mean the team is broken. It means the team is trying to win. That's what's happening here. The WNBA has shown strength with that strike authorization vote. Now the challenge is converting that strength into a strategy that can actually hold together under pressure. Carmichael Jackson's message that debate is engagement is basically an attempt to keep everyone focused on the same end goal, even while they argue about the route. The clock is ticking. March 10th is not far away, and what happens next won't just shape the 2026 season. It will shape how players are compensated and respected during the biggest growth phase women's basketball has ever seen. If you're watching the WNBA closely right now, this is a moment to pay attention, because the outcome here affects everything that comes after, from roster stability to league expansion to how future stars view the WNBA as a career destination. And I'm curious where you land on this. Would you rather see players take the risk of a season delay to fight for a stronger revenue sharing model? Or do you think protecting the league's momentum right now is just as important?